just in case rather than a just in the nick of time response. Rosalind Jordan, Al Jazeera, Washington.
So what is the state of ground-based U.S. missile defense? The addition of 14 missile interceptors will bring the total to 44 on U.S. soil. New installations are scheduled to be deployed by 2017. Fort Greely in Alaska is currently equipped with 26, and Fort Vandenberg in Southern California has an additional 4. In April of last year, a bill passed in the lower house of Congress which proposed building a third site on the East Coast, but it never passed the Senate. The Defense Department maintains any missile launched on the East Coast could be defeated by interceptors already in place. Well, joining us now is Barry Pavel. He's the director of the International Security Program at the Atlantic Council, a think tank based in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for being on Al Jazeera, Mr. Pavel. Many analysts have said that North Korea is years away from producing a missile capable of reaching the continental U.S. So why do you think the U.S. is beefing up missile defense now? How real is a threat, really?
Well, I think you mentioned that. First of all, thank you for having me here. But you mentioned in your news segment the dates that matter: 2016, 2017. These things take a while to get fielded. They're complex systems, and so, as the Secretary of Defense said, this is trying to stay ahead of the threat. I think it's more to do with those years than with 2013.
Could it be also more of a political message to the American people rather than a military message to North Korea itself?
I think it plays a little bit of both. What I would have liked to have seen a little more of was sort of some things that might happen in the near term in the region, and that reason is we have a new South Korean president, we have a new North Korean leader who's really acting provocatively and no doubt will respond to this announcement in some way. And so I think a little bit more sort of enhancements to the military posture in 2013 for reassurance of our very close allies, South Korea, Japan. I think I would have expected a little more of that in today's announcement. And
also, this is an about-face for the Obama administration, who decided in 2012 to limit defense missile capabilities. There's a lot of debate about this. Are interceptors really all that reliable?
Well, there's different interceptors that are fielded. There's the Standard Missile 3, which is the core of the architecture that has been deployed to Europe by the Obama administration. And that system is tested and fielded. It's in the fleet. It's the one that was used to shoot down a decaying satellite a couple of years ago. The interceptor that was discussed today, that's called the ground-based interceptor, or GBI, that's a more complex system. There have been many in the U.S. Congress that have questioned, is it ready? And you heard Secretary Hagel say, we're going to do more testing if it's not ready. And I think that might be required because it is a very complex technology and remains to be confidently fielded.
Isn't there a risk here also, Mr. Pavel, of irking the Chinese? Yes, they voted for these economic sanctions, the latest sanctions against North Korea at the UN Security Council recently, but I imagine that the Chinese would also be worried about the U.S. deploying a radar tracking system in Japan.
They cannot be happy about that, but the dynamics over the last several years have been pretty clear. I think the U.S. has always signaled to China whenever there was a North Korean provocation, as in when they torpedoed a South Korean ship a couple of years ago, when they launched 7 missiles a couple of years ago at once in tests. Whenever these things have happened, the U.S. signal has always been to China, we're going to have to take some action and beef up our military assets in the region unless you can get a better handle on North Korea and stop these provocations. That has not happened. So I think China's at an interesting decision point where, for the first time, we're starting to hear out of official Chinese think tanks a little distancing from their ally North Korea. We'll see what happens there.
How might North Korea react, you think, to this U.S. decision? We've heard this belligerent language from them recently, but this is nothing new. Do you think they'll react differently now that the U.S. is also flexing its muscles?
Well, you are right. This is part of a long-term pattern of provocation, reaction, negotiations, then additional provocations and reactions. It's a long-term pattern, but what has tended to happen was the way what North Korea exactly does tends to be unpredictable, and so we should be vigilant. We should be worried. It's very hard to predict exactly what they'll do, but I think you're right. They will do something, and the U.S., South Korea, Japan has to be prepared.
Thank you very much for your thoughts, Mr. Pavel. That's Barry Pavel, Director of International Security Program at the Atlantic Council, joining us there live from Washington. Well, North Korea